Welcome to Camp Maddie. Gather around the campfire with us for our panel discussion. Our panelists are Clare Callison, Director of National Operations for Austin Pets Alive, Luis Quintanilla, Senior Director of Sanctuary Animal Care at Best Friends Animal Society, and Becky Costner, Executive Director of the foster-based rescue Let Love Live. They're here to tell us about their experiences with low-barrier foster programs. Panelists will start with 3 questions. With each question, I'll call on one of you to start, and then the others can chime in afterward. And then after these questions are done, we'll take as many as we can from our audience. So we'll start with Claire. What does taking a low barrier foster's welcome approach mean to you?
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. And it's great to be here. So there's a lot of things involved with this, but I think it comes down to one primary theme, and that is that people are the solution and not the problem. So and what that looks like in action is that every decision we make, everything we do should really boil down to that. And we should take an approach of not screening people out and not thinking of our role as a staff member at a shelter. And when it comes to foster, as, our job is to screen people out and to find, people find the red flags, but it's actually our job should be finding more ways to bring people in and constantly looking at our processes and our policies on how we can be more inclusive and invite people into our organization. So I really think it comes down to that. And when we think of people as a solution, it makes it pretty clear that when you have a foster home or willing people out there, or even just community members, and you compare that to the shelter, that the shelter is always going to be your last resort. The foster home should always be a first resort, because we know all of the implications of what that means for dogs and cats if they're at shelters longer. We know that's not ideal. So I would also like to say that I don't know a single organization that's doing this perfectly. And I think that is an important strategy and a mindset to take, that we've never accomplished it. We've never done all the things. Sometimes I hear that, and I even can catch myself saying, well, we've tried that. We already do that. But this is the perfect time of year as we're going into 2024 to literally question everything. That could be exercises like whiteboarding your entire process start to finish and ask yourself questions. Are these questions we're asking in the foster application, are these checks that we're doing, is this an enjoyable experience? Is this weeding people out? Are we making it easy for people to help us? And I guarantee you, as you go through each process painstakingly, you're going to find things that are, just old practices that aren't serving the organization. And I think this is the time, especially with the challenges that we felt in 2023, that we truly need to question everything. And it's exciting. It means maybe opening up new avenues and starting new programs, and changing the way we're doing things. And I just would caution, I would recommend that people aren't afraid and lead with courage and trust that people are innately good. And we can't let, our experiences with a few people and a few negative situations cloud our judgment of all people. And it's incredible what you can accomplish and how many dogs and cats and animals you can place into foster homes when you take that open mindset. So,
Luis or Becky, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I agree with what Claire said too, and one of the biggest important things that she kind of touched on is constantly reviewing with your team on a regular basis for what type of barriers are popping up, and then, like she said, if you have something that you have tried before, maybe at that point in your program it wasn't good for a fit, but it could be something that is a good fit for you now too. So always remembering that it's not a cookie cutter mold to follow as you continue to grow your foster base.
All right, Luis, what changes have you needed to make in order to lower foster barriers and keep them low? And how did you address this with stakeholders?
Sure. I think the biggest barrier that I faced at whatever environment I've been in, whatever shelter I've been in, is that fear of the unknown. And I think for very long, for far too long, there was this sort of shelter mindset, this sort of bunker mentality of that, it's us versus them. And I think having to really walk away from that and break through that, those old habits, which are understandable. I mean, we carry a lot of trauma with us in this industry, right? It's not that unreasonable to become sort of scarred and sort of closed off and distrustful. But I think the biggest thing that I've tried to instill in my staff is, what are we actually afraid of? What are we actually afraid of? Because the status quo is here. It's been here for decades. It's always going to be there if it turns out that our experiment in trying to open up doesn't work. Obviously, the data doesn't show that. Obviously, we're on the right path here, really opening up. But really, I think it's just fear of change and fear of the unknown. And you sort of get protective of the animals as though they're your own, which is a great instinct. And it can propel your team to achieve miracles because they treat every single animal as though it's their own. But it can also very easily turn into an anchor that holds your entire team back if you get protective of this one individual animal and no owner or no foster is good enough. And so I think that's really a big thing to tackle is that, I think while some of that fear, at least part of it may be very well founded, just based on things that we've experienced anecdotally, it can't be something that holds you back. And so I think it's just eliminating that fear and say, hey, look, we're also from the same community that we're a part of. So what are we afraid of? We're not so bad. So I think that's really the main thing is just fear of the unknown, fear of changing things and sort of an overprotectiveness of the animals when it's not needed.
Becky, and I would love to hear from all three of you on this one too, because I think it's an important question that gets asked a lot. So how has having a low barrier foster program affected your ability to find great fosters and engage with your community?
Yes. So for us, it's like we always want to imagine that we're rolling out this red carpet and that it's welcome to everybody. It's not this exclusive club to belong to, that everybody is invited. And you don't have to have a home environment that is a picture perfect, Better Homes and Garden idea situation, because we do not have home inspections. So we chalk that out the door. One of our biggest part is overcoming distance. So everything is #no barriers. And that has allowed our program to be able to grow all throughout Minnesota, but then has reached into Wisconsin and North Dakota, all around us and everything. And that really has knocked that down. So our community isn't defined by a barrier of a city or a county or a state line, with us being able to take that approach. So it's really been able to let our fosters, with word of mouth, promote Let Love Live within their community. So then their community all kind of like comes together. So like here we are with all these little bubbles, and it's just this big, huge open area for our foster program to be able to do that. So it lets us definitely reach people that under normal circumstances we wouldn't be reaching to be able to invite to foster. So when they reach out to us and and you're talking to them, we're like, okay, well, why do you think you can't foster? Because a lot of times they're not, I'm not sure if I'm experienced enough or if my home is right. We're like, we can match you with a dog or cat, and we can provide resources for you. If you're new to fostering, we can match you up with a foster mentor. So there's so many different ways to be able to continuously be growing the program. And then as you grow your foster base, it just creates more remote volunteer positions that you're able to add to your program too. So it's been a huge welcoming part of our program.
Yeah, I would just add to what Becky said. I agree with all of that. It's really allowed us to get away from the mentality, just what Becky was saying, of the you need an experienced foster in order to take certain populations home. It's allowed us to, instead of doing so much work and putting a lot of resources on the old sort of screening method and the application process and the endless checks, moving the time and resources into supporting fosters. So, if we see someone that's willing and open and passionate, and they might not have ever taken on a dog with behavior challenges or a cat with medical issues, when we approach it with this open mindset of you've got the attitude and you're willing, you've got the passion and an eagerness there, we can support you in that, even if you're a first-time foster. And to be honest, we don't have the luxury, right? We don't have this pool of thousands of experienced fosters for incontinent cats, for example. So we have to be willing to teach and support people that are green and new. And often those are some of our best fosters that come through, and they're really dedicated, and they enjoy that support. I think also the openness has allowed us to, I mean, just bluntly saying, is save more lives and saving populations of animals that are still being euthanized in shelters, you know, and really looking at the volume there. We all know that resources are limited, so we can't have as many staff as we would have liked or want. But one of the things that I think is so exciting is developing a foster mentor program. So with that open mindset, having fosters that are more seasoned or have a little bit more time and enjoy helping other fosters, putting them into a leadership role, giving them that title of a foster mentor so they can support others has just been really impactful. And I don't think if we didn't have that open mindset that, you know, fosters are limitless and we can give them all these opportunities, we wouldn't have neat programs like that have developed over the years. So that's something anyone can do, because I know our budgets for foster staff is finite.
And this question kind of goes on the back of that one. Mackenzie says, there are no kill shelter that adopts out dogs with bite histories. How do you handle sending out dogs who may already be a liability legally, but with the open foster system? Like, how do the two work together?
Do you want to take that, Luis?
Sure. Yeah, it's always a common concern, especially for municipal partners that we work with. You know, basically saying, oh my God, you're going to adopt out Cujo every 5 minutes, and there's going to be a rabies outbreak all throughout South Texas, right? This kind of a concern of like, oh my God, it's going to be terrible. But what we try to approach it with is that every interaction, whether it's an outcome to a rescue through adoption, or it's a temporary, you know, lifeboat situation with foster, it's complete transparency and assuring these people that, you know, we're going to give them everything that we've observed, everything that we've heard, everything that we know. And we walk them through, you know, line by line. Okay, we saw this, we've observed that, but either way, there's always a baseline sort of, you know, methodology to introducing your animal to your family or to your, you know, your permanent pets and things like that, right? So every animal gets that baseline transparency, and then when it comes to those, we're just saying, look, the path is narrow, but you know, it's none of us are experts either. I always like to point to our staff. You know, our operations director used to work at Build-A-Bear. I have a law degree. Our foster program is run by one person who's been in animal welfare forever, and before that, I think she worked at a pizza place. Like, there's no expert, in other words. That didn't happen from years and years of schooling. It's just, you know, kind of on the job learning, in the same way with a foster. And I think encouraging that sort of, hey, we're all kind of amateurs trying to figure out this as much as possible, and it's not as scary as it seems. I think just kind of opening that, you know, vulnerability of it. Hey, look, I may have a staff shirt on, but I'm not that much smarter in this. I can barely microchip a dog, so it's, you know, it's not that hard. And I think it's just approaching that liability of, you know, it's either going to, we know the outcome, right? If we follow all of these steps, their behavior is going to be different, most likely based on everything we know, going to be different in a home setting versus a really crowded, stressful, noisy kennel, right? And so kind of explaining that baseline that, hey, every single person is an individual. Same thing with our animals. And if we kind of approach it with that sort of reverence for every animal's individuality and their own experience, I think that informs a lot of really successful stories. And I can't think of any situations with our foster you know, placement that have come up in a negative way because of that transparency. So yeah, that's kind of our approach, and it's helped. And those advocates or those fosters get transformed into advocates. So it's really helpful. You know, that customer service experience, you're just exploding your community support exponentially every single time that you have a positive interaction with a foster. And yeah, that's kind of how we do it.
Yeah, I would just add that exactly, you know, making sure you're transparent about it all. I think, you know, the legal risks lie in knowing something or an event happening or a bite happening and not disclosing the details around it. And I think the way we talk about is really important. All bites are not the same. All bite incidents are not the same. So explaining the environment, explaining what led up to it, the circumstances around it, and making sure that we are setting the foster up for success and giving them tools and training on how to avoid that situation happening in the future if possible. One of the things that we're actually at APA or Austin Pets Alive that we're shifting to right now and looking into is, instead of this adoption process for those challenge cases being like a person and a desk and a computer and talking in like an office setting, we're moving to going and doing it out in the yard. So having an actual like training session in person as the adoption counseling process, so that the foster can, and I said adopter, but the foster can get that experience, see what the behavior looks like hands-on, and actually be touching the dog. And it's almost like just a mini training session before the foster goes home. So we're working on, instead of doing so much administrative and talking, like, let's just do that outside and have a more hands-on experience so we can set that foster up for success.
Okay, this is a situation question. When taking animals from the public or pulling from the local shelter, we normally do a foster request in order for us to pull them. For example, we took in 2 puppies who are too young for our kennels. A foster agreed to take them, but then decided the puppies were too much after a few days. We cannot give the puppies back to the surrenderer, but we're struggling with finding puppy fosters for them. How can we avoid this? And are there resources for puppy fosters?
Yes, we actually just had this happen, like I think on Monday. And the biggest part is that's where in your foster program, you can have just short-term fostering. One of our biggest approaches is if they say, hey, I took 2 puppies and it's too much, separate the puppies, if able to, get one puppy into another foster program, or, into another foster home, sorry, not program, get them into another foster home is a lot of times a huge success for that part. But then just having those short-term fosters, so that way it helps you be able to shift the dog until you can find a more permanent foster situation for them. And a lot of times if you have a foster Facebook group, we'll do urgent pleas right on there, because then people are more apt to be able to be like, okay, they're already in the program and what can I do to help? Because a lot of people are like, oh, they got it covered. But then when you're able to do that separate SOS plea, a lot of times then they'll step up and be able to help out too. So
Claire, I feel like APA has tons of resources. Would you like to comment about the resources for puppy fosters?
Sure. Yeah. One of the I'm a visual learner, so but not everybody is. So we have different formats for different people, and I'm happy to share that. So we have online resources for first-time puppy fosters, or if you need a refresher. One of the things I have felt, so we have manuals and guides to walk people through, which I know is beneficial. I like to see what other people's setup is and how they operate. So just like we heard in the last presentation, we lean heavily on a Facebook group, a dog foster Facebook group. So they're able to get support. And one of the best things I've learned just personally as a foster is seeing other people's foster setup to contain all of that poop. And I was like, that's genius, right? Because cleaning is so much easier. So seeing pictures, and again, that kind of goes into the mentor aspect of it. But that page has been that group has been very beneficial, and people just demonstrating what they do at home. But sometimes when we get in those situations, just like Becky was saying, we're pretty transparent. We don't ever want to bash anyone for not showing up for a foster puppy or pickup, but we do kind of spell out that situation. Like, it's 5 o'clock. We have nowhere for these pups to go. Can anyone come in? And we'll provide all this support. So we do escalate that in terms of an urgent plea. And again, making sure we highlight all the things we offer. So if you can offer anything, a crate or a starter bag of food, or again, splitting the puppies, right? Anything you can offer, that definitely helps. So really selling it when you're doing those marketing pleas, I think is key.
Awesome. All right. Abby asks, how does a foster mentor work? Is it an experienced foster who can help an inexperienced one? And actually, she directed this one to Becky.
Oh, for sure. Yes. So we have a lot of fosters that first started with us back in 2021. And once we know that they're really sound with that, we encourage them to become a foster mentor. And they're the ones who, like on our foster Facebook group, that are constantly monitoring that and providing those resources, but then reaching out one-on-one to be able to provide additional tips and tricks and everything that they might need and everything. And then that helps us free up our time, so that way we're not kind of like having to babysit the Facebook page all the time and everything. As soon as somebody feels confident enough to be able to give advice to other people, there is no specification of what they'd have to do to become a foster mentor. It's pretty much just the title of, hey, us asking, being like, hey, like you are very sound and, and have experience and the ability to support people. And I think that having more foster mentors is better than having a limited set amount of foster mentors for that, even if they're tag teaming. Like if you have a dog that kind of has that behavior issue, setting them up with 2 fosters, but then they each have their own foster mentor to be able to get through those tough days, even though, because we all know dogs can be 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and those 1 step back days can be really frustrating to a foster. So just making sure that they have that resource and the people that they can talk to and vent to, but they can acknowledge how they're feeling and stuff. So.
All right, thanks. This is going to be an interesting question. How big is your active foster person pool at one time? Is it in the hundreds or thousands?
We generally run our foster program on the Minnesota side. We're about 100 to 150 dogs at one time in our foster program. We just started our Texas program. And so right now that has about 20 to 30 dogs on that side. And so that's about what we have in our program at one time.
We're like high hundreds to in the 1,000 mark, and it definitely ranges. It definitely changes seasonally. So as we know, like kittens and moms and kittens is definitely a seasonal trend in Texas here, and so we see that number fluctuating throughout the year, and we definitely have peak seasons. But yeah.
We're usually at a minimum of 200, 250. I think that's where we're at right now. And during the summer, it's almost 400. It got up to almost 400 this summer, maybe a little bit over. A lot of that, of course, was we're kittens and puppies, but that's typically our baseline is about 2 to 250 when it's slow, in quotes, very slow.
Awesome. All right. Michelle asks, our state, which is Georgia, requires home checks because our foster homes are considered an extension of their shelter legally. How would you work through this barrier?
Yeah, this is a tough one that comes up, and I don't want to speak as an expert because I live in Texas, but I think my first step would be connecting them with some other groups in Georgia that know how to or have been able to handle this barrier, and that's a really big barrier. I think I've heard things, and I'm sure if someone from Georgia is on here listening, they might have a better answer, but I've heard things where volunteers are dropping dogs off to foster homes as part of that check. I've heard of a couple groups doing that, so that instead of like having to do the check and then, say yes or no, and then bring the dog to the home, they're doing it in just one trip. But I would definitely think that we should do some Georgia connections there, because I don't want to speak as the expert, but I am recognizing that as a huge barrier, and hopefully that's something that can go away hopefully soon.
All right, this is another one for Becky about foster mentors. Natalie says, we've considered the idea of utilizing foster mentors, but how would we connect them for direct communications? Obviously, we'd prefer not to give out their personal phone numbers for privacy reasons.
Oh, for sure. So you would be surprised. Our foster mentors are very open to using their personal numbers. We do recommend to them too, if they don't want to get a Google number added right to their phone. That way they are able to text and call from that. A lot of them just automatically become Facebook friends. So they're communicating via Facebook or on their personal phones. We really haven't seen that become any type of barrier for them at all like that. Our phones are amazing with the ability to block people once they, if things go awry and crazy and everything. So we just haven't had that issue as far as that being a problem.
Next question is, how long would you leave a dog in a foster home? How long is too long? Is a 6-month foster stay too long for the dog's mental health?
Better than 6 months in the shelter.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on the foster home, obviously. But even the nicest shelter, I mean, I'd rather have them in a foster home for 6 months than in the shelter for 6 minutes. I think it's just individual, right? I mean, it'd be great if we could have higher turnover from that foster, because if they're that, loving and committed to this animal who isn't theirs, then it'd be great if they could be committed to, I don't know, 20 in that time span. But sometimes there are just those niche dogs and those niche fosters that, okay, look, it's working. And if we haven't found a more permanent placement for it, why it's not broken, why fix it? I think, and obviously there has to be good communication. If your fosters start ghosting you, they start missing appointments, they start whatever, okay, that's a different story. But assuming everything is going well, we typically approach it as, okay, leave it alone. They've been holding on to them that long, let them hold on to it a little bit more. If communication is open.
Yeah, I second that 100%, that the dog is always going to be better in the home. And, if you feel that you need to mix it up a little bit, obviously in a 6-month time frame, some people may go on vacation, but they could have that backup person that kind of already knows the dog, and maybe they get together and go to their house or something just to have that break. Or if they need like just the weekend off, then that dog can shift over to the weekend. And it can kind of break it up and see like if there's behaviors that still come up. So then that way, once the dog is adopted, how that is and everything. But otherwise, if the dog is there and doing fine, we leave the dog there. We've had dogs in foster homes, for that 4, 5, 6 month range and got adopted and stayed adopted with no higher rate of return or anything. So
somebody else going to answer? I'm sorry. Cutting back.
No, just completely agree.
Awesome. Do you have job descriptions or guidelines for foster mentors, or do you feel that part is not necessary?
I think it could go either way. I know it takes time to write up, expectations and guidelines, but I think it could be helpful. I believe we have a description for a lead position that can help sort of structure your program. So I think it is helpful in engaging they're foster mentors, but they're volunteering for that role. I think it can be very helpful to have something written down so that it becomes almost more official, and also it gives them expectations. A lot of volunteers and fosters like to know exactly what is being asked of them, and so I think if it's too blurry, you could lose some engagement there. Also, getting their buy-in on because they know best too, of being a foster themselves and being a new foster at one point needing support. What do they feel that should be included in those expectations and in that guideline? But I have found that it's incredibly flattering to be asked. A lot of fosters feel honored to take on a leadership role for your organization. And I really do think that, it's absolutely key. And I've seen it really happen around specialty populations. So kind of going back to that last question that Becky was answering, if someone, for instance, I keep thinking about incontinent cats, but if someone has fostered an incontinent cat and has done well and seems to be, champion it, you can always ask them that question, if they would be willing to help others. And if, some people don't have the time, but I think it is very flattering. And even to have like a title and job description, I think it really does help keeping them engaged and feeling needed and important, because they absolutely are. So.
With the foster Facebook group, what if you're not able to have a private group due to public record? It's a municipal shelter.
I know I caught the tail end of the presenters before. Turn on that little moderation thing. So then that way posts have to get approved if that is able to be done. And then that way you can still get that approved. And if they post something that like kind of is questionable, reach out to them and be like, hey, on your post, we want to approve this, but can you please reward this or this? So that way it's staying for that. But I would just kind of control the post before they can go on then.
Do you have your mentors travel to homes to do vaccines? Oh, it just jumped. Basic aid, basic first aid, like dewormer, cleaning, training, etc., or is it more for online support?
Our foster mentors do more online support for that. We actually, if it's like deworming and stuff, we actually talk to the fosters and provide them with how to be able to do that. If it's litters of moms with puppies and stuff like that, we actually have in our different areas, we have volunteer vet techs and they have their little medical supply kits and they'll go and they'll vaccinate, microchip, deworm dogs and everything as needed that way. Otherwise, we do a lot of walkthrough with the fosters themselves, if whatever their comfort level is. So,
yeah, I would say it's similar. It's a lot of online support. There can be times where, for say a dog with behavior challenges, that a mentor could go over to someone's home and walk them through things and look at the home setup and talk about like tips and help them, support them that way, hands-on in the home if everyone's comfortable with that. So that's definitely not off limits and definitely has been something we've done in terms of vaccine clinics and wellness clinics and getting the wellness done. We've leaned heavily on volunteers to be able to work with our medical program to do that every weekend. So they don't have to schedule an appointment. It can just be kind of a drive up, get your dewormers and freshen up on the preventatives for the weekend. So that's more of a foster initiative to support or volunteer initiative to support fosters. But yeah, I think as long as you're open-minded on what it can look like, whatever feels like the biggest need for your organization and for your fosters, I think, doesn't have to be super, super strict rules in terms of what they can do.
Maribel is asking, do you offer compensation for fosters?
Our program
no,
doesn't.
we do not.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, we do not. We can barely afford an X guard. We can barely afford anything. We can barely afford existing. So definitely not. It'd be nice if we could do that, but no. And we definitely don't have the resources to pay for that. We'll try to, incentivize things. We'll give them every tool that we possibly can, every resource. But unfortunately, we're not able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. One thing that we do in our foster Facebook group to kind of help promote pictures and videos being shared is we'll do one post a month and we'll be like, hey, post your pictures and videos on here and you'll be entered for a prize and it'll show what the prize is. That's generally something that's donated and it's usually something that they'll use for their dogs and cats and stuff in their program. When we get like Starbucks gift cards donated and stuff, we'll use that for that. In December, we do send home a goodie bag that goes home with all of the fosters and everything. And we try to include something for the fosters themselves, whether it's like little hand creams or whatever. It's all donated stuff that we put in there. And then toys, dog treats, cat treats, that type of stuff in a little bag. So we do that through the month of December. Otherwise, we don't have other incentives besides the resources and shout outs that they get for being a part of the program.
Yeah, just to chime in, same here. No, I know other organizations have been able to do some incentives like that, monetary incentives. We don't do that, but partnerships, I think it would be, I'd love to grow this more, but we have some foster perks like discounts at local businesses or local places around town. And then we do have a 5-star foster program, and that's really reserved for specifically dogs with longer lengths of stay and pretty complicated behavior histories. And just rolling out the red carpet for those, what we call 5-star fosters. And so there is a small investment of making sure they have a t-shirt to be part of that recognition program. But yeah, there's things you can do to bring people together in terms of like potlucks and things that don't cost a ton of money, but just are bringing fosters together and showing that you appreciate them. So yeah, and that's a great question, because that's got me thinking about what we can do more in that realm for next year.
All right. I have a question that people seem to be commenting on that is an interesting one. So when a dog first arrives to the shelter, how long should he be in the shelter before going to a foster? I prefer that they go to foster right away if we have one available. The shelter prefers them to stay in the shelter and have a higher chance of getting adopted. And I think this marketing from foster homes really figures in here. So
I think if you don't have a good system for marketing or enabling your fosters or giving them the know-how and how to market those animals, it may be an issue. But we have a Facebook group that's full of, that's specifically just for our fosters. And, everybody gets put on shelter love immediately and stays on shelter love, regardless if they're on property or not. It's different than walking in to the facility, right? I understand. But when it comes to our facility, at least one of them, it's falling apart so badly that we don't want people back there anyway. It's just too dangerous for anybody to walk there. So it's kind of, even better for them to be out of the shelter. So, for us, there is no time. There is no time limit, unless, of course, there's an animal that's, microchipped and the owner's on its way. Other than that, we need the space desperately. There's no space. There is no time. There is no luxury of time or space. And so it's either get them out or they're not getting out. But hopefully someday we have enough fosters and enough equilibrium where we can maybe do that. But our strategy is just get them out as fast as possible, because we're guaranteed to get twice as many replacing them this afternoon.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times I see if dogs move straight to a foster home, they seem like they can decompress quicker. So then that way you're able to learn their personalities on a quicker basis, which helps you be able to do that marketing on a little bit different tactic. And that's where your foster mentors can come in. If you don't have good pictures and videos, our big part now is just videotape the dog, because we'll be able to get pictures from that video of the dogs and everything. And then there's always the different resources you provide them that say, hey, take the dog outside, video them, take pictures. So you can be able to walk them through step by step to get the marketing pictures and videos that you need. But just the dogs being in the home situation, I always think trumps them being sitting in a kennel building somewhere.
Just also the welfare of the animal really factors in. If it's a dog who comes in and they're immediately like panting and drooling all over the place, get them out. Because it's going to be really hard for them to get to know you while they're super stressed. How are you guys getting more dog fosters to sign up and retain them? We're having a hard time having fosters take behavior dogs that need a break from the shelter, and even taking dogs that have kennel cough.
I think that one is where we kind of have our top people that foster that are more for the behavior dogs, and then kind of rotating them. So then say okay, you have a behavior dog, and then they need to have that downtime break. So their downtime break actually is give me an easy dog. And I'm one of those that do that too. And so then I'll take a break and I'll have and then when I get that dog, I'm holy buckets, this is kind of easy. But I love the challenge that comes with the behavior dogs, where they need that extra training and everything, and one-on-one time and everything. So I think that is just something that you have to keep growing for that.
And I think it has a lot to do with also the marketing too. The way that you talk about the pets
Yes.
Can make a big difference too. For fosters that aren't able to come to the shelter to pick up foster dogs, especially when your network area is quite large, how do you handle foster transport? Is it all volunteer based?
Yeah, that's a good question. Mostly volunteer based. We have yet another Facebook group for people that want to volunteer. They might not be able to foster, but they can transport. And so we put a transport plea request, but often we'll ask any volunteers or staff working that day, is anyone going that direction to go home? And likely there's there's someone going that way or willing to. But yeah, we usually put a plea out if we need any transport to volunteers. And it's amazing how many volunteers, they feel bad that they can't foster or adopt at that time, but they're willing to transport. And it's equally as big of a need for us too. So yeah, happy to have that help.
Mm-hmm. And giving it just a fun name, we call our Miles of Love. So it's our road warriors that are making an impact, and they sign up for that. So, and that's where it kind of goes hand in hand. Your fosters create more remote volunteer positions for you to be able to add to your program and stuff. So,
all right. What extra resources do you use if you have a dog that's been in foster over 2 years and there's no interest?
wow. I think the first part is why is there no interest? Is that a behavior dog? Is there some quirks for them? Can you run adoption specials, adoption sponsorships? Have you done big, huge marketing ploys for them to be shared for their story? A lot of times, once our dogs are hitting those longer length of stays, it seems like if we can do that part and say, hey, this dog has been in our program now for, this many days. Don't leave it in months, but leave it in this many days, because it's a bigger number. Can you catch it on, your local news station? Can you catch it in the newspaper? Different ways of being able to market that dog.
Yep, absolutely would agree. Marketing, it's huge. I've learned this from you, Kelly. Amazing to look at how many profiles. It's, you get used to seeing their picture pop up every day, but when's the last time we've actually rewritten the bio, or do they even have a good bio that's not full of stop sign language, that's actually inviting people in and excites people to want to meet that dog? Good photos, good videos, changing that completely up, because a lot of times just one picture, it gets lost. I really do think like making it intentional. If you've got naturally, usually when dogs are in foster or in shelter for a long time, they accumulate a couple of friends along the way, people that are advocates for them. And so really empowering them and then getting them excited to create like a task force. Like just met a dog named Pickle yesterday. So like Team Pickle could come around and rally around how can we get creative and get Pickle a home. And that could be, flyers around neighborhoods and doing creative posts. I just saw a foster put up I don't know how long it'll last, but one of those like yard signs in front of a Walmart busy business during Black Friday. It was like, adopt this dog. It was really cute. So we'll see how long it lasts, but it was great. A lot of eyes were seeing that post. So it's amazing when you not feeling like you've got to solve that problem on your own. When you bring in other people, volunteers and other fosters to help, that gets the creative juices rolling. And I think it can be incredibly discouraging and overwhelming to feel like it's on myself to get this dog a home or get this cat home into foster or adopter. And so really just harnessing the power and asking people for help. It's amazing how many people will rise to the occasion. Just asking for help is key.
Awesome. Well, we are at time, so any questions we didn't get to will be answered in Maddie's Pet Forum. Speakers, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. It was awesome. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.